Hey guys, it's Miss Vinson. Today we're going to talk about price floors and price ceilings. Now, price floors and ceilings are the government's way to try to manipulate the market price of something. Now, we know how the market naturally wants to settle at an equilibrium price. But what if the government takes a look at that equilibrium price and they decide that that equilibrium price is too high and they want to keep prices lower? Or they decide that that equilibrium price is too low and for some reason they want to keep the price of something higher. So when the government steps in and manipulates prices in a market, then they are imposing price floors and price ceilings. These are called price controls. First, let's talk about a price ceiling. Now, the government institutes a price ceiling when they feel like the equilibrium price is too high. Now, let's use an example, maybe with gasoline. Suppose the equilibrium price for gasoline sits at about $8 per gallon. I mean, that's terrible. But if you think about that, that's really going to hurt America's economy because consumers aren't going to go on vacation. They're not going to go to the store as often. They're not going to spend as much money at the movie theater. They're not going to go to theme parks. Also, sellers are going to be hurt because their shipping costs, if they're having to ship their products somewhere, their shipping costs are going to be outrageously high. And if you're a seller and part of your company is delivering things, well, you can imagine how expensive that would get. So the government takes a look at this $8 a gallon price of gasoline and they decide they need to jump into action and do something. So what they do is they pass a law and they put a price ceiling in place that says no gas station in the United States can sell gas for any more than $4 a gallon. That is the cap. That is the maximum amount that can be charged for a gallon of gasoline. So the first thing to understand about price ceilings is that ceilings are meant to keep prices down. Ceilings set a maximum that prices cannot rise above. So if you're trying to keep your equilibrium price down, then you need to draw your price ceiling below your equilibrium price on your graph. So price ceilings have to be set low to be binding or to be effective. Now, this sounds like a great solution, but it's not without its flaws, because we know what happens when there's a price below equilibrium. A shortage is created. Take a look at what's going to be happening on our graph. Since the government said that gas can't be sold for any more than $4 a gallon, well, the quantity demanded of gas has definitely increased. But the quantity supplied of gasoline has decreased because it's not as profitable anymore. So yeah, if you can find gasoline, then you'll pay a lower price. But the trouble is finding the gasoline in the first place because price ceilings create shortages. The quantity demanded is exceeding the quantity supplied of gasoline. Now, normally we would expect prices to rise back up to equilibrium, but in this case, because a law has been passed, prices cannot rise above that $4 mark. So price ceilings are meant to keep prices down. They're meant to benefit consumers, and they set a maximum that price level cannot rise above, but they're not perfect. They do end up creating shortages in the market, so it can be difficult to find things. This is how in some major big cities, you may have heard of how some apartment buildings are rent-controlled apartment buildings. These apartments are usually in very desirable downtown locations, and the city government has stepped in and said that the landlords can't charge above a certain amount for those apartments. Well, those apartments are always in high demand. People always want those apartments because they're in great locations and they're rather affordable. But what if the government takes a look at an equilibrium price and they think that the price is too low and they want to keep the price higher? What kind of example would that be? Well, if you work a job, some of y'all might be living examples of a price floor every single day. In this example for a price floor, let's talk about the price of labor. Now, don't get confused with this. Who are the suppliers of labor? Well, it's going to be the households, right? Because they're supplying those resources. You and me, and when we go to work, we're supplying our labor. So the suppliers of labor are the workers. And who are the consumers of labor? Well, those are going to be the employers, right? Those are going to be the companies and the businesses that want to hire workers. And so a wage is the price that a company has to pay for a worker. Now, suppose there are no laws on wages. Suppose that the equilibrium price for wages sits at around $2 an hour. Sounds pretty bad, right? I mean, honestly, who could make a decent living earning $2 an hour? Not very many people. And the government would agree with you. They're going to step in and say, we think that workers should get paid more than $2 an hour for their work. So they want to step in and make sure that the price of labor or wage is going to stay higher than $2 an hour. And so they're going to step in and pass a price floor. Sometimes it's called a minimum wage. And they're going to say that people cannot get paid any less than $7.25 an hour. So whenever the government wants to keep the price of something up, they're going to set a floor. So think about it, guys. Floors keep things up. If you want to have an effective or a binding price floor, then it has to be above equilibrium price. Floors set a minimum that prices cannot fall below. And they do benefit suppliers. In this case, it benefits the suppliers of labor or the workers because they're guaranteed a higher amount of money for their job. But a price floor is not without some problems. We know that anytime there's a price level above equilibrium, a surplus is created. In this case, it's a surplus of workers. So let me break this down for you. At $2 an hour, if that were the equilibrium price for labor, at $2 an hour, there probably weren't that many people filling out applications and lining up trying to get jobs because $2 an hour may not be enough to convince you to use your resources in labor working a job. $2 an hour may not be enough to convince you to get up off the couch. But what if you were guaranteed $7.25 an hour? If you were guaranteed $7.25 an hour, now we're talking. That might be enough money to convince you to go fill out an application or to go to work and get a job. So as the price went up, so did the quantity of people willing to supply their labor. Now, if you're a business, do you really want to hire more workers if you have to pay them all more money now? No, you were used to paying $2 an hour for every worker, and now you have to pay $7.25 an hour for every worker. You definitely aren't going to be looking to hire more people. In fact, you might have a hard time keeping the employees that you currently have. You may not be able to afford them all. So notice that the quantity of labor demanded at these high wages is less. So we have a situation here where a lot of people are filling out applications and they're looking for jobs, but not a lot of people really want to hire. So we have a bunch of people that can't find jobs. It's very difficult to find jobs. Now, in the news for the past couple years, there's always been this talk of minimum wage going up to $10 an hour. And that might sound like a great idea at first, but just realize that if the minimum wage were to bump even higher from $7.25 to $10 an hour, then that surplus of workers is going to get even bigger. The quantity supplied of workers is just going to increase, and the quantity demanded of workers is just going to decrease. So more and more people are going to be out there looking for jobs and filling out applications, but there are going to be less and less positions available. So the job search might become really difficult for some people, and some people might even get laid off. So price floors are trying to keep prices up. They benefit suppliers, and they have to be set above equilibrium price to be effective. But remember, it's not perfect because price floors create surpluses. Now, the biggest mistake that students have with price floors and ceilings is flip-flopping them on their graph. As you can imagine, whenever students are asked to identify or draw a price ceiling, where do you think they probably want to put it on the graph? Probably at the top. And where do you think they want to put a price floor? Probably at the bottom, because we're so used to think of the ceiling being up high and the floor being down low. But don't think about where they are, think about what they do. So, if you were to have a great big giant bunch of helium balloons, all right, what is going to prevent those balloons, if you let them go, from flying off into the atmosphere? Probably the ceiling of the building or the room that you're in. So ceilings keep things down. Now, if you think about floors, a floor is something meant to keep you up. Like if you've ever been on stage, you walk across the stage floor, you're hoping that that stage floor is going to keep you elevated where people can see you. Many of you are hoping to walk across one particular stage floor at the end of your senior year, and that's walking across the stage to graduate. Really, you definitely want that floor to keep you up, right? So floors keep things up, and ceilings keep things down. So don't think about where they are, think about what they do. Hopefully these examples make sense to you. Hopefully the floors and ceilings are not too confusing for you, but I know you'll catch on to it with just a little bit of practice. Until later, see you guys.